me dig in. Let me ask you questions. Most startups fail. You know, the rate of failure is so high. And yet, not only have you succeeded, but you've succeeded in a market that's been really rough. So tell me what made you successful. What do you attribute that to?
I was listening to a podcast from Tim Robbins. Is it Tim Robbins? No, Tim Robbins, the actor. Tony Robbins. From Tony Robbins. And he said the number one success in making a startup go or a new company go and everyone fails is, somebody take a guess. What's the number one factor that you think Tony Robbins says leads to success of making as a company? I think the stats are like 95% of businesses fail in 1 year, and it's like 99 by 5 years. It's something like that. And I can tell you the practical reasons, but what do you guys think is the number one trait to make it? Anybody? Give me one thing. What?
A business plan.
A business plan. Everybody usually has a business plan. But you need it. I mean, don't get me wrong. You need a business. You need to know what you're doing, for sure. Somebody right there. Exposure? Keep going.
A leader.
What?
A leader.
Leadership. Leadership is enormous. All of those things. You have to have all of these things. By the way, I came to a forum when I was in MBA school here, and it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You guys even know who that is? All-time leader in sports or in scoring the NBA. So he's way more entertaining than me, but thanks for coming out. I really appreciate it. Keep going. What else? Tony Robbins did the exact same thing, and everybody was saying the same stuff, okay? Here was the answer. And they gave a whole bunch of other things. I don't have enough resources. I don't have enough money. I didn't have enough staff, all this stuff. It's resilience. I'm telling you right now in our world with communications, this is what he said too. All of the resources you need are out there. It's who's going to go find them. Who's going to go find them? If you have a great idea, there's money that you can go get. People will get behind you if you're a leader. And you'll get the support and all that stuff. The difference is people, they run into a roadblock and they think there's no other options. I have no other choice. I had to do this. I had to do that. There's always another choice. Anybody watch the show Suits? I love that show. In there, they're like, if there's a gun pointed at you, most people do what the gun says. And in that Suits, they say, point the gun back. There's always 100 different options. I'm telling you, if you're resilient, you can find a way. I started our company in 2007, a real estate company. Anybody know what happened in 2008? It was the worst possible time. You could not, December 2007 is when we started our company. If you go look up the LLC formation, it could not have been a worse time. Because we picked student housing. Because in 2008, did anybody drop out of school? 2009, 10, more people actually went back to school.
So that brings me to the next point. You and I have talked about failures and how essential it is to be resilient, and you're going to have failures in business. I'm curious to hear about some of your early failures or some of the things that shaped you, that you got through.
So here's a good story. In BYU, and BYU had access to Bloomberg, like a Bloomberg machine. Do they still have those? So I had all this information for technology and stocks and all this stuff. In 1995, with money I made from waiting tables, I started buying stocks like Dell, Intel, DoubleClick. Who else? Another big one I owned. Microsoft. I was there when Windows 95 came out, and I owned 100 shares of Microsoft. Had I been able to hold all those, I mean, where would I be right now, right? But that's just because I was paying attention. You know, here's a really good story. I was at my grandmother's house. She lived in Salt Lake City. That's where my parents are from. I read this article in the Deseret News that says there's this new company called, I can't think what it's called right now.
It's right at the tip of my tongue. I invested in it too.
Anyway, somebody might know it. They invented the very first portable hard drive. Anybody know that company? They're out of Utah. iOmega. Thank you. I see this article that says iOmega is building the hard drive that you can attach to a computer. I think it was 100 megabytes. I mean, you know how small that is? It was 100 megabytes that you could add to your computer that only had like 16 or something for memory. So I go type it in on Bloomberg. There's one analyst that follows it, and they said their earnings were going to go from 56 cents to $3.56 in 1 year, and that they couldn't keep them on the table. So I said, nobody else knows about this in the country because nobody else is from Utah reading the Deseret News in the business section like me. So I went out and took all the money I had and all those stocks. I built it up to like $16,000 or something like that. And I put it all in iOmega. And I bought on margin, which means you can double. And then I went to my little old grandma who lived in Sugar House. And I said, Grandma, I need 40 grand, 35 grand. We're in the stock, you can't lose. And we went in and put it all in there. And I bought you guys can do the math, 8,000 shares of iOmega for about, I think, 17 and 3/4. Within 4 days, it was at $14. So 8,700 times 3 or 4, that's how much I lost. Anybody do the math? I lost 40 grand in like 3 days. Charles Schwab was up here, and this is before E-Trade and day trading and all that stuff. Anyway, long story longer, I went up to Charles Schwab and I said, hey, they get money in there, to put more money in. And when you buy on margin, it means you borrow from them and you can double the amount you bought. However, if the stock would just go back up, it would wipe out my margin call. So I walked in there, talked to them, and they said, hey, you have 5 days to meet your margin call. So I was like, I need 5 days, I need to go back up. And back then, the NASDAQ was moving 100 points every day. Okay? As soon as I walked out the door, that guy called his boss and said, there was some 22-year-old kid in here that's buying way too much stock, and he doesn't know what he's doing, and they like a $40,000 loss. That was in February of 1995, I think, or 96. By May, the stock was at 110. It would have been worth, like, if you do the math, a lot of money, like 1.5 million bucks. And I look back on that and it just wiped me out. Okay, it wiped me out. And then I built it all back up. I went and bought my grandma a car. I paid her off $350 a month. I bought her anyway, all this stuff. Took years to recover. I built my account back up to over 50 grand trading stocks and options. And I'm here at Utah State. And I built it up to from 50,000 up to 150,000, mostly from buying options and doing all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, the NASDAQ in March, I think 17th or so of 2000, just started falling. I lost 100 grand in my account. My whole MBA education was paid for, and I had to give a presentation after I just lost 100 grand in my MBA class on some company. And I remember I could barely even talk. I was just blown away. So that's a huge lesson. But I'll say this, I'm really glad that I didn't hit it big when I was that young, because it would have changed the whole trajectory of what I know now and what I learned, and I probably would have crashed and burned later.
So I know this isn't one of the questions, but I'm curious. The failures seem to have fueled you onwards as opposed to making you more shy of moving forward. Am I reading that right? And how have failures helped you in your career?
You know, if you've ever talked to someone that's successful, really successful, you can almost always guarantee that they failed. It's how you learn. It's the true grit. It's how you learn from your failures that really make you great. Like those experiences and the mistakes you learn, that's where you start growing. And then down the road in 2008, 2009, 2010, when it was brutal, the experiences of the past really helped us to get through. In 2000, it was about 2010, we branched out from student housing to assisted living, and I found a partner in New York that wanted to partner with us and manage all the stuff. I never even met him in person, and I convinced him to give me a loan of $250,000 just on a signature to keep our company going. That's just pure resiliency. I mean, but that wasn't one guy. I talked to 100 guys, but that was the one guy that, and he ended up making millions off the deals we did with him.
So how did you make the turn into real estate? How did that all come together? And what's made Nelson so successful? Because you have, what, 400 million under ownership now? Moving to
800 million.
800 million.
Yeah, 800 million.
800 million.
Yep. 800 million. We hit the Inc. 500 in 2017, which is really amazing. We grew 3,000% in 3 years in terms of our revenue. It's out there. We are in the greatest opportunity in the history of the world to be successful. I personally feel like we are doing it on the backs of hundreds of years of sacrifice for us. Like no one in here helped build this building. Nobody built this campus. Nobody founded the country. None of us likely built the car we drove in to get here, or the roads. Everybody else over decades and hundreds of years, thousands of years, has paved a road for us. and now given us the greatest opportunity in the history of the world to go out and be successful. And with business folks, that's all of us. That's how you measure the success, is you go out there and build companies, which then in turn hire people and change lives. And help the economies boom and keep the world moving. And what's great about today with technology, it's constantly changing. Every time it changes a little bit, there's a million small little break-offs and new ideas, like Instagram. Beach chairs. Beach chairs, I take a beach chair we buy from Costco and we go sit and watch soccer games all day. Everybody does it. Somebody needs to invent a modern beach chair that's way lighter and nicer and nimble, and then put it on Instagram, and you probably sell 1 million of them and make 10 million bucks. I mean, there are so many opportunities now with the information out there. So really, in answer to your question, it was constantly innovating. So I was trading stocks, and I still have this idea of this hedge fund I could start. And I started a hedge fund right after I came out of MBA school. I learned, and I didn't know anything about raising money. I raised $300,000 from my friends and family, and I was like, I had to make money on them, and then I got 20% of the profit. Well, if you make 20% of 300,000, that's $60,000. 20% of that is 12 grand. You can't live on 12 grand. So I was selling shoes at Nordstrom where I was trying to get a track record and all this stuff, and finally it was just too much. I made $16,000 in 2003. And it was just too much to carry. So then I went and started raising money for a guy in Newport Beach, gave me a job on pure commission. And somebody said, I got a call from someone, and they said, is this 1031 exchange eligible? Anybody here know what a 1031 exchange is?
You can roll real estate into a similar investment property without taxes.
No taxes. It's a 1031 exchange is the greatest way to build wealth in America, in my opinion. What it means is if you own real estate, it's the only place outside sell. That was very good. 1031 is a tax code like 1099. If you sell a piece of real estate, land, building, apartment, anything, you can roll it into a new piece of property within 180 days, and you have to identify it on a little identification sheet within 45 days, and you pay zero taxes, zero capital gains. And so a guy called me and goes, I got $1 million I need to invest, but is this 1031 eligible? I go, yes, it is. I hung up the phone. I turn around, I go, what's a 1031 exchange? And a guy in there goes, oh, it's just, he started explaining to me like that. I started looking it up online. Back then, everything was slower online, but you could still look it up. And then one of the guys in my office goes, oh, there's a company called DBSI out of Idaho that sells 1031s that guys with Series 7s can raise for. And I had a Series 7 because I worked at Fidelity in Salt Lake answering phones. So I go, okay. So we called him in, and the guy came in and gave us a speech on what a 1031 is to 4 of us in the office. I just sat there and I said, wow, this is the greatest opportunity I've ever seen. Then I went to the owner of the company and I said, I don't want to sell your real estate fund anymore. You had a little real estate fund that he was raising money for to go buy land and get entitlements and stuff. I don't want to do that. I just want to do 1031s. Because here's the thing, the greatest wealth in the country right now is owned by what demographic? Anybody know they own 80% of the savings and loans? There's not savings and loans anymore, but savings accounts in America. What demographic owns all that? Anybody know? Boomers, the baby boomers. And guess what they're all getting ready to do right now? Retire. So in the next 10 to 15 years, there's going to be a massive transition of wealth from those guys to the next generation. That right there alone is a huge opportunity for you guys. Find something that you can appeal to. Who's after the baby boomers? Gen X, that's me. All of us are going to start inheriting trillions of dollars. But in the meanwhile, if you had a baby boomer who bought a duplex they were renting out in 1989 for $300,000 in California, it's now worth $1.3 million. Well, they're tired of managing it. If they sell that, they can roll it into a 1031 exchange, pay zero taxes, and then if it's professionally managed like we do, they don't even have to lift a finger. No more tenants and toilets and renting it out. When somebody moves out, you got to clean up after the cat, the dog. We do it all for them. So I saw this. This is what this DBSI guy said to me. I go, that is genius. So I went and created my own website. It was 3 pages from Easy Site Builder. And I had an old man typing. That was my guy. And I wrote, my own headline said, use 1031 exchanges to keep your money working for you. Okay? And I had a little thing you could fill out. And I was the first guy. It's called tenant in common structures. A tenant in common, anybody know what that is in real estate? What's a tenant in common? Yeah, you guys are learning a lot today. So tenant in common, if you and I go buy a piece of real estate, I own 50%, you own 50%, we're both on title, we're tenant in common owners. So the IRS said in 2002 that you could have up to 35 of those and it would still be 1031 eligible. So we could buy a big property like this and have 35 investors come in and they're all 1031 eligible. Does that make sense? So I wrote that on this, and there was a few companies that were doing these things and they needed brokers to raise money. So tenant name is TIC. Okay, so TICs. That was a big industry. There was even a TICA, the Tenant in Common Association, actually based out of Salt Lake. Omni Brokerage was a big broker firm that I competed with. It was out of Sandy, coincidentally. And I was the first guy on Google AdWords with 1031 TIC. And all of a sudden, my inbox just started blowing up, started crushing it, to the point where I couldn't even call people back. People were reaching out to me going, hey, I just sold this property, I got 800,000, I got 900,000. A guy called me like my second one. And by the way, that first guy for $1 million, I didn't even know what a 1031 was. I got 400,000 of his million. And they paid 7% commission. So my first commission on that, I made more money than I made in selling shoes at Nordstrom in an entire year. My second commission was 100 grand. I went and met a family up in Northern California. It was 900,000, and they committed to put all 900,000 with me. And I'll tell you in a second, but I don't want to give you tangents.
I mean, you seem pretty fearless as I listen to the story. You just jump into something you know nothing about, and you're like, I think I can make money, and I'm going to do it, and it doesn't matter if I failed before. Did you ever hit a spot in your career where you said, ooh, I'm scared, I'm going to pull back, or have you always been a full throttle forward kind of guy?
That is a really good question. Okay, I want you guys all to listen to this. How are we doing on time right now?
You got 15 minutes.
15 minutes. I want to tell you the story. I want you to hear this. This is the resilience. I went to BY. I played basketball. I played basketball at Snow College. Anybody heard of that? I actually mostly clapped. Anybody go to Snow? Did you love it? I loved it there. Best place on earth. Like 2,000 kids. So anyway, here's the deal. I mostly clapped from the bench, but before that, I went to BYU camp when I was 15 years old. I had this coach from Nebraska, little short guy, but he was one of those guys who was a motivational speaker type coach, and he's like, yes, way to hustle, run, da-da. And everybody knew him, right? And so I went to BYU basketball camp one year, and he was the coach. He was one of the guest coaches. Everybody knew him. The second year, I got him as my coach. I was on his team. They divide you up into teams, okay? He was teaching us a lesson, and the whole camp was just like this inside the gym. We're all sitting around the three-point line, okay? He's in the middle of the three-point line, like right here. We're all sitting out there, okay? And he holds up a ball, and he goes, who here knows how to hustle? And a couple I was like 15 or 14 or something like that. And a couple the senior guys that thought they were really good, they raised their hand, I know how to hustle. He goes, all right. And he throws the ball over all the kids. We're probably half as close because we were wider. He throws it in the air like this, and he goes, go get that ball. And the kid from the middle right over here kind of jumps up and kind of didn't know what to do. And then he looks, and then he runs, and then he ran all the way down. But by now the ball's all the other side. He ran and grabbed it, and then he kind of jogged back and threw it. And he's like, that's not hustle. Show me how to hustle. He threw it again. And another kid jumped up, and this time he sprinted as fast as he could all the way to the other end, got up and sprinted all the way back and gave him the ball. And he goes, that's not hustle. And then there's a kid named Brady that was 6'3", 250, that was playing center, that had no business at 6, should be playing football, right? That was in there, and that was from his high school. That was on his team that he brought. So he goes, Brady, show him how to hustle, and he throws the ball like this, okay? And while the ball's in the air, Brady jumps up from where he's sitting, takes one step in the middle of all the kids, and just dives like this, lays it out, grabs the ball before it even bounces 2 times, turns around and fires it back. And he's like, that's how you hustle. Okay, that right there is what I took to, when I sat there, something just went off in my head, okay? The next year as a junior in high school, I set the record for steals in a game. I had 11 steals in one game. So I wasn't that great of a dribbler and all that. It was just pure hustle. I was really quick for my size, 6'4", and I played the top of the zone. And we played a really good team, and I think their center went to Arizona State. I got my first dunk in a game and had 11 steals, just all over the place. Anyway, that's the resiliency that I took in a business. And let me make one more point. Here's the big difference, though, okay? When I went to play college. By the way, I had to walk on snow. I didn't have any scholarships. So when I tried out there was over 150 kids. I also tried out at BYU and made it. There's only 70 kids. But at Snow, it was everybody's last chance to make it. By the time they went to BYU, they kind of gave up the dream. So at Snow, it was very competitive, okay? One person to walk on out of 150 kids, okay? And I made it. I made it on one word. What do you think that word was? Pure hustle. So every single loose ball, I was all over it, every rebound. And I never played, by the way. Like, we're playing College of Eastern Utah. The first game I got no PT. Second game, we're down by 34 points. And we're sitting there, we're just getting crushed. They had three guys that went Division I the next year. And all of a sudden he goes, get in the game. Okay, I came in and we're down by 34, okay? And I think there was like probably 12 minutes left. At 3 minutes left, we were down by 9. And they had to put all their starters back in because all the scrubs came in, including me. And it was just pure hustle. I hit 2 threes. My first 2 threes I ever shot at Snow, both went in. If those don't go in, I probably never play again, okay? I averaged 4 points. 4 points a game, but I averaged 4 minutes. It's just pure hustle, and that's what you got to take to business. So when you do that, you start building confidence. And then I don't have time right now, but I'll just say it's the second deal I ever did. Our first deal was $4 million at the University of Oregon. I found it on LoopNet. Anybody know about LoopNet? If you want to know anything about real estate, LoopNet. Anybody wants to get in real estate, there are so many opportunities of arbitrage in real estate because it's not a regulated market, and everywhere you go, it's just different. And LoopNet, there's tons of opportunities. Anyway, $4 million, took everything we had to get the money to close. My second deal is at Utah Valley University. It just became a university. It's like 8 years ago. We bought a property that's 30 yards from campus. They never were going to sell, but I knew the guy because I went to Snow and he was selling a property at Snow, and I went down there and looked at it. I decided not to buy it just because it's called Snow Gardens, if anybody knows Snow College. Decided not to buy it, but that same guy called me later and gave me my second deal at $9 million. And real quick on that story, the Zions Bank was going to give us the loan. With 17 days left, they pulled the loan. I had no loan. All my money was tied up. I thought it was going under, and it was done. And I called the guy from Zions Bank back. Some high guy decided we weren't big enough and we didn't have enough. And he was just apologizing, and his name was Flynn. I think I go, Flynn, what am I going to do? I'm going to lose 200 grand. That's all my money that I had down in earnest money. He goes, call Bank of American Fork. I called Bank of American Fork, and in 17 days, they gave me a $6 million loan, and we closed. And there's been a lot of those situations. I mean, I didn't just call bank. I called every bank within 3 states of Utah. But he gave me that one, and we became Bank of American Fork's largest client in 4 years, 5 years. I think we had $50 million with them over time.
Wow.
All right, sorry, go ahead.
No, so as you look out among these students, you were one of these once. If you take yourself back to the younger version of yourself, aside from hustle, which I love, and resiliency, what are the things that you wished somebody would have told you in your younger self?
So here's the second part of that I just left out, okay? It can't just be hustle. You have to have the know-how. Like, remember I told you I came in the game and I hit those 2 threes? That's because when I was in high school, I shot 50,000 baskets over and over and over and over, right? So when I got the chance, it was there. That's the same thing with education. After I came out of BYU undergrad in finance, I was like, I know business, and I was going to start my own company. And one of my best friends, my dad barely graduated University of Utah, and was like the first college student. So graduate student wasn't really in my mindset. But his dad went to law school, and his brothers went to law school, and all this. And I was like, come start this company with me. I had another idea. Let's go do this. He goes, no matter what, I'm getting an MBA. That was the best advice I heard. And I was like, okay, yeah, all right, I'll put it all off. I'm going to go. And that's when I started looking around, and I came to Utah State. At Utah State, that was like in business shooting 10,000 baskets. Because what I thought I knew at BYU was just like, that'd be like practicing a couple times a week. I wasn't putting the time. When I got to Utah State, the things I learned, and I can give you some things that right now that I remember 20 years ago that I learned in the class. But the number one thing I learned was how to learn. Like how to come in and analyze and figure stuff out. And one of the most important things I think I remember is somebody had brought in an article, I think it was from Princeton Review. You guys, I tried to find it real quick, but I couldn't find it. It was from 2000 or 1999. And it was giving us the average starting salary, or what determined it, coming out of MBA school. And the article said it wasn't the school. Harvard, I mean, number one I think right now is Wharton, and then Harvard or Stanford or something like that. Where's Utah State right now, MBA school? I had a guy from Chicago School of Business, their top 5, once said, when I told him I got an MBA from Utah State, he goes, Utah State has an MBA program? I go, yep, I'm putting it on the map. But you know what that article said? It said it didn't matter the school, it mattered the individual. It mattered the talent, right? So if you took someone with the same GMAT score that went to a top 200 school versus the same GMAT score that went to Harvard, guess what? Their earning power was the same. So I read that, I go, I don't care if I'm coming out of Utah State, this is awesome. Okay, but you have to have the know-how. And Utah State and the MBA and understanding business, so when you get in there and you're talking to these guys to have them give you money, they have to believe in you. You have to know what you're talking about. You can't just have an idea. Let me give you one more thing. This is another saying I heard that said, if you're a little employee, junior level, and you tell your coworker, you say, hey, I'm going to be CEO one day. What does that coworker say? Yeah, you? Okay, and I'm going to be the president. Right, like that. But if you go to the CEO and you say, hey, I'm going to be in your shoes one day, what does the CEO say?
How can I help?
That's usually what we say. Yeah, how can I help? Great. But you know what he says? How are you going to do it? See, that mentality isn't, oh, it's impossible. You can't just show up and become the CEO. You got to know how to get there. How are you going to do it? You need a plan. When you apply to MBA school, first thing they ask you, what's your experience? Where are you going to go? What do you do with an MBA? You got to write all these essays. That's crucial.
Okay, last question, then we'll open it up for you guys to ask a couple questions. Then we'll let Alicia have a second. So, Pat, give me just, to close, if there's one of these that I haven't asked, tell me what it is. And if not, then my question for you would be, what are the habits that you employ that you think are most critical to putting yourself in a frame of mind and to be successful? What habits do you have?
Let me answer that with you asked another question. When you have fear, right, and all that stuff. Sometimes every day you have fear. Sometimes you wake up and you're like right now I have $800 million under my care. My name is on all of those loans, like probably $500 million of loans. And then I think to myself, I'm like, there's no way I can do all this stuff, right? But then when I see the other people from Harvard and all these other places in person, I'm like, who are they to be there? Like, why am I not the guy to be there, right? Who's stopping me? So one quick thing on there is no matter what your circumstances on there, get out of the victim mentality. Don't make excuses. Don't say, well, I didn't have this, I didn't have that, I'm not this where that guy is, right? Just you got to believe in yourself. I heard something from a guy who does training. We paid him $50,000 to come do training. They said that one of the most important things of being an entrepreneur is you got to be pig-headed. Because as you start having success, everyone and their brother and sister will give you advice. Everyone. It's just like right after a football game, listen to Monday morning and all the callers calling in when they lose. Why did he do this? He shouldn't have gone for 2. He shouldn't have. Like, everybody second guess you. Everybody, you got to see the vision and stick with it and believe in yourself. But you've got to know what you're doing. You've got to understand businesses. So like at Utah State, I remember I walked in, the professor wrote on the board, sustainable competitive advantage. I never heard that when I was at BYU undergrad, but I heard it at MBA school. You guys know what that is? That's probably the single most important thing you need to remember if you want to have a successful business. If you come up with something, there's somebody else that's smarter, faster, and has more money, they'll come after you or your business. You've got to be able to protect it. In student housing, what do you think the number one predictor of success is for a student housing complex? If you're a student, what's the first thing you look for? Proximity to campus. Nobody can get in front of you. We just paid $5.7 million for the best location at Utah State. We're building 800 block, which is like right across from the ARC, right? The ARC, whatever you call it, that didn't exist when I was here. When I was here, I lived out by Walmart in a town, and I had to put my bike in my truck and drove and parked on Utah State dirt lot that I paid for, and then got my bike and rode to the Huntsman building where I lived. Okay? Let me see, there's one more thing I want to say.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing I learned from Utah State in one of my classes is that you can get too top heavy. That was invaluable. I still remember the class. There are too many white-collar executives and not enough people doing the work. All those people get lazy and they want high salaries and they just want to tell other people what to do. That happens to businesses all the time. Everybody's the genius and wants to be up here. Another thing that I remember from Utah State in one of my classes is that we did a whole thing on the printing press. It wasn't the inventor of the printing press that made all the money that we know when they learned how to mass produce books. It was the people who knew what to do with it. That's where we're at with technology right here. You don't have to know how to, build Instagram. You just have to know what to do with it and constantly be thinking, paying attention, look for opportunities because they're everywhere. Everywhere there's a big, huge company, they're going to get spread thin. You guys can come in and do a better customer service or better technology or pay attention more and have a little smaller business right underneath and steal business from the big guy. They won't even know you're there, but you'll be rich.
Pat, how do you keep up with technology as you age and, new technology? We're just living in a crazy age where new social media, new things are coming up. How do you stay current enough to make sure you're not getting outsmarted?
That's a great question. The best thing about student housing is I have the latest technology because I got all their kids. I call you guys kids. It's all the students. The students are whatever the most recent thing. Like Facebook is gone basically for students. TikTok and all those things, they come and go. What was the other ones? What was the Snapchat? Snapchat kind of came and went. Instagram's hanging on. But you know what the technology is, fortunately for us, but you got to hire young people. Because the people coming out, which by the way, we have a lot of internships. We'd love for you guys, if you're interested in coming and learning from us on the corporate side, on the management side, and it's great resume builders. And one thing about student housing, this is my own 10-second plug I'm going to put out there, okay? We have Class A student housing. It's more expensive than all the rest of the guys. But here's what I want you to think about. When you walk 15 seconds to get to ARC versus walking 10 minutes, right, from being outside, or down the hill or somewhere farther away and freezing cold, that 10 minutes each way is 20 minutes. You're not really exercising because you're freezing and you get the exercise inside the building. 20 minutes times, let's say twice a day, that's 40 minutes times 5 or 3 days a week times a whole semester is like 60 or 70 hours. Most people, most college kids, especially in Utah, are way more concerned about not going into student debt and saving every last dollar and working on the side, right, for 12, 13 bucks an hour to get everything. I would say forget about all of that. I would say it's way more important for you to focus on the education that's here. That 80 hours or 60 hours is way better to go to your professor's office hours. They have office hours. There's like 10% of kids use them or something like that. Go learn from them. Go do an extra project. Get involved in student government. Build your resume. Because when you come out of school and you do well, I mean, Utah State, I think, is the top 5 for ROIs and value. I mean, I graduated with my MBA from Utah State with $12,000 in debt. Okay? Took me a couple years because I was working at Nordstrom, but once I got going, like I paid that off in one check. I didn't even think about it. I'm like, why did I spend so many hours waiting tables and doing all this stuff? And just think about this. If you have a B average, you can go to probably a top 100 MBA school and take this across law or whatever else you want to go. If you go to a B plus, you probably are now in the top 30. If you go from a B plus to an A minus, you probably go top 25, top 20, and you go from an A minus to an A. Right now you're in the top 10, and then you take time to study for the GMAT or the LSAT or one of those. It's way, way more important than saving $150 a month or trying to earn an extra $100 a month right now while you don't have earning power. Because when you come out, if you go from a B to a B plus, and you go from a top 100 school, to a top, let's say, 50 school, your income just went up 60 or from 60 to like 80,000 or from 80 to 90. That's your entire debt for 4 years here, close to it. Don't waste your college time. It's invaluable. And it's not just the who you meet and the networks and all that and being social. I mean, that's all. What you're doing right now is the most important years of your life because it changes your trajectory, where you're going, where you're going to end up. For me, if I make a decision, Tessa makes a decision, we're already way down the road. It's not too much, but you guys, what you decide right now has generational impact on you and on your future. I would focus on really what matters. Spend your time really what matters, being efficient, and do that.
That is great advice. Great advice. Okay, we have a couple of minutes. He's been named one of the most influential leaders in Orange County. So you have right here at your disposal a really smart leader. And we have probably 5 minutes for you to ask questions. Let's take advantage of the time. We've got 2 microphones. Does anybody have any questions?
State your name and major, please.
Hi, my name is Hajar Ben Saha, and I'm majoring in international business. My question for you today is, as a student, I often feel like my main purpose is to learn. How can we learn and be motivated once we finish school? Thank you.
Once you finish school? That's a really good question. You can never stop learning. With technology changing everything, there's a million different places you can learn. Like you can take classes, everything's available online. Like for example, I read magazines all the time because they're the most up to date. Harvard Business Review is awesome, costs $20 in the airport. I buy it almost every time I travel. Inc., I follow Inc. I get a lot of news from Twitter. I don't actually read Twitter for the fun stuff, but I get it from the news. You have to stay up to date what's going on. But that's what I was saying about my Utah State education. It taught me how to learn. That was the most important thing. It wasn't actually what I learned, but it taught me how to learn. Which a lot of people in law school and stuff like that, they don't learn those things. They learn actual laws and, hey, that's an objection and da-da-da. So there's a lot of people in other fields that think they're really smart when they get into business. They don't realize that you're going to adapt way faster than them. And when you adapt and move, they can't keep up. That's where you got to go. And in answer to your question real quick, I remember sitting in an MBA class and a guy walked in and said that he started at $80,000 a year working at a bond trading company. I just sat there thinking, if I made 80 grand a year, my life's over in a good way. It's done. It's done. And now I probably have, 30 people that make over 100 grand that I pay them. It's way better.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Somebody be brave.
So you said you hire a couple interns every year. What attributes are you looking for in those interns?
I think just motivation. I like kids. Oh, here's another thing. One of the greatest opportunities, I'm glad you said that, one of the greatest opportunities right now in the United States, okay, that's where I work, all across the country, is people are lazy. What does everybody say about the current generation? What's a word that everybody uses? Entitled. Well, you know what's great about that for you guys? If someone comes in and goes, oh, I'm not working 8 hours today, they put in 6 hours and they roll in, they spend 20 minutes getting their coffee or their whatever and talking to their friends and all that stuff. You know, that's fine. Then they leave early. If you work hard, just put in a good hard day's labor. You don't even have to work extra like I did. Just put in a hard day's labor, you go right to the top. They are very hard to find. We spend endless hours in HR because people are so, they think that, oh, the employer should be doing this and they should be doing that, and you didn't tell me that, and you didn't tell me this about my job, and I can't do my job unless you give me this chair, and all this different stuff. If you throw all that away and you go in and say, oh, here's one more point I want to make. I want you to remember this, okay? And this is right along the same lines. What determines how much money you make or how much money you're worth, how much somebody will pay you? What's the most important attribute to a company? So she just said how valuable you are, okay? That's very true, but it's not actually accurate. I'm really glad you said that because that's what I used to think. It's not about how valuable you are. The person that is sending out the FedExes, answering the phones, like doing all the things, without them, you couldn't do anything, right? They're super valuable, okay? The nurses are invaluable in the operating room, but who makes all the money?
Doctors.
Why does the doctor make way more than the nurses? I want you to think about this. I'll tell you why. It's how replaceable you are. Not how valuable you are to the company. You know how many people have come in to me and said, I want to raise. I do this and this for the company, and I'm da-da-da, and I deserve this. Here's the problem. If what they're doing, and I say, yeah, that's super valuable. But if I can go hire 20 other people for the same price or lower, and they can do the same thing you can, it doesn't matter how valuable you are. It's how replaceable you are. I'll tell you right now, if you couldn't shoot a basket at all, right, in the NBA, but you could stop LeBron James from scoring 20 points, just play defense on him, you would make over $10 million a year. Because there's very few people that can do that. It's how replaceable you are. So when you go into an employer and you want a raise, say, hey, I deserve a raise. Don't go in there and tell him how valuable you are because he's going to look at, oh, yeah, but can I replace you? The nurses are awesome. My wife's a nurse, my mom's a nurse, everything. Nurses are the cream of the world because they're the cream of the crop. But it's a lot easier to become a nurse than it is a surgeon. So the surgeon, the replaceability, right? That's what it is. So think about that. When you go out there and you want to get a job and all that, say, hey, how can I be irreplaceable? And you will start making more money. And part of that can just be your effort and your attitude. And if you need a new chair because it's hurting your back, go get one yourself. Look up ergonomics or whatever and go get your own chair. Don't go and blame the guy because you have too much blue light on the screen and all that. Go buy little glasses. Do it yourself and then don't even tell them about it because your efficiency output's going to skyrocket and you will go up. And when you start building a reputation that you perform, right, you will become in demand, and that's when people come in. Like right now, I'm courting some people, like I'm giving them signing bonuses. It's all about how replaceable you are. So that's a really good question.
That is excellent advice. I say that all the time. Do you guys know that the difference between a problem solver and a non-problem solver translates into raises? And if you just get the difference between getting a 2% raise a year and a 5% raise each year, translate at the end of your career earnings to over $3 million. So problem solvers make more money.
If you're irreplaceable and you come to me and you go, hey, I'm thinking about leaving, and I can't just find a new, I'm like, oh crap, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
Here you go.
That's right.
What do you want? If you're replaceable and you come to me, I just go, loved working with you. Good luck, see you at the top.
Yeah. Well, a big thank you to Pat for everything he shared. And we have, thank you, Pat.